Hey friends, welcome to Embracing Your Season. This is your host, Paige Klingenpeel. I'm so excited that you're joining us today. And before we start digging into our interview today, I would love to say a quick hello to our producer, Mike Sergovia. How are you, Mike?
Paige, I'm doing great, thanks. As we record, it's Friday, so I'm even more excited. Um, how was your week?
It's been a little messy for me. I'll be honest. I think if people have checked out the previous episode about my kiddo breaking an arm, the
Yes.
following week, my husband got a kidney stone. And
Mm.
then the following week, my daughter got T-boned by a deer. But let me tell you, friends, that's not even the kicker for me. Like, those things
Uh-oh.
are awful and they're
Uh-oh.
not great, certainly. But let me tell you, so one of my privileges as a minister in the church that I work at full time is I get to do what's called ministry moments. And that means that I go up on the platform and this is post worship. Everyone is in this worshipful mood and I get to lead out on communion. It's so special and so sacred. And I still get nervous in front of people. Mike, do you get nervous in front of people when you
Yes.
talk?
Oh,
Yeah, right?
absolutely. Still, and I've been doing it forever, and I still do. Yeah.
I exactly. So no matter how often we do it, like I'm still a little nervous. I'm also nervous because I never know what's going to come out of my mouth. Like it literally is news to me every time I open my mouth. So it's always shocking. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens today, Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in the middle of this. I bring up the cup and the bread, and it's all one thing, and I start discussing the cup and I said, now as we take the cup together, and that's when I realized that the cup doesn't go first because I see the shock in the eyes of my friends front row. So then
Oh,
my face panics
oh,
and I'm thinking, well, now I just have to commit, right? I'm in front of 600 people who are literally looking at me like, what are you doing? So being the improviser that I am, I'm like, you guys, we're going to commit to this. We're going to mix it up today. And so then, like, part of the people are laughing. Part of the people are like, well, no, we can't do this. This is just not traditional. And I'm just like, you know what? The Lord says that we can mix it up. And thank you, Jesus, that we can laugh. And I mean, it is dead quiet at this point because people have to flip over their cups, right? To get to the bread
yes.
or
Oh
flip
my
over
gosh.
the opposite, right?
Yes.
My camera person, who I dearly love and I've been dear friends with for 5 years now, cackles. It is dead silent and she cackles. And I just lose it. I can't pull it together, friends. And here I am in front of 600 people. I get paid for this. And I just can't pull it together in this sacred moment of communion. Luckily, we say a prayer, we get through it. And I'm like, okay, I did it. No one's going to talk about it. We're all going to ignore the fact I totally messed this up. A 78-year-old woman pulled me aside afterwards and said, in all my life, I have never done the cup first. I was like, well, first time for everything, friends, right? What a way to mess up communion. But it was still beautiful. And Jesus was still, he was still glorified through it all, right? That's all that matters. That's what I'm
That's
telling
right.
myself, at least.
That's right. And the funny thing is, Paige, life can get messy, right? Things like
Oh,
that happen,
brother.
and you just kind of work through it. Speaking of our guest today, we have a wonderful guest, Cynthia Yanof. She wrote a book, Life is Messy, God is Good, Sanity for the Chaos of Everyday Life. This is going to be amazing. But, Paige, before we get to her, why don't you tell us a little bit about our guest today?
Yeah, well, that's what I just love the title. Can we talk about life is messy? I mean, like I
Yeah.
just demonstrated and I mean this is what 3 weeks of my life and it is a hot mess sometimes, but God can be glorified in that. So
Mm.
I'm so looking forward to having the conversation with Cynthia. But Cynthia, a little bit about her is she went to Baylor University. She earned her JD in law school. This girl is a lawyer, friends. Like, how
Nice.
cool is that? So she practiced for around 7 years and then she stepped down and did the coolest, hardest, most ministry oriented job you could find out there, friends. And that was becoming a full time mom and doing ministry along those lines. Now she is a wife. She is a mom of three. She is a blogger and she has her own podcast, MESSmerized, which again, such a cool title. And she has a heart for Jesus, family, and foster care. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation because the title really rounds up the rest of my life right now.
Absolutely. This is going to be amazing. So, Paige, let's get to your conversation now on this edition of Embracing Your Season.
Cynthia, I'm so excited that you're joining us today. Thanks for taking time to have this conversation.
My goodness, thanks for having me. And I mean, I think I was already ministered to by your story and all the 78 years never taking the cup, never had the cup first. And
Right.
you know what? There are some areas in life where we need to take the cup first,
Oh,
metaphorically
girl.
speaking. So,
Preach
man,
that.
what a word. I think of as a girl who grew up in church and just thought things needed to look a certain way, not only in church,
Yes.
in my marriage, in my parenting. And someone needed to tell young Cynthia, like, hey, the cup first, it still works. It can still be blessed. So
I
thank you
love
for
that.
that.
That was like you're right, that was a whole sermon message, right? Just drop the
Totally.
mic. Oh, man. I love the fact that you speak and write books and have a whole podcast on Life is Messy. Can you share a little bit more about what that means and really what led you to writing this content?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you asked that because as we're talking about, I mean, as a girl who grew up in church, I really thought things should look a certain way. There should be a straight line, and that
Mhm.
if God had a plan for my life, which I know that He does, it's going to be like A, B, C, D, and it's going to go in this line. And then all of a sudden, life wasn't following what I thought it was going to look like, and I had to realize that like we have a choice. We can either say like either God isn't sovereign, and these things are unexpected to Him and me, or we can say God is sovereign and He's in the midst of the messes that come along. And so I just kept seeing these little spots where I'm like, okay, which way am I going to go? Am I going to believe God's word that He is for me and He is good? Or am I going to believe what the world's telling me that, this is just the
Mm.
harsh reality of where we are now? And, we have an enemy, which we do, but we have an enemy and, he ends up winning out in certain circumstances. And sometimes we win out. I was like, no, that cannot be the truth. And so as I've just walked the life of parenting and being married and being a lawyer and then not being a lawyer, and we did foster care, just all these different things we've done in our life. I'm like, you know what? If we as believers can't find God in the middle of the mess, then I don't know what we do. I don't know how this turns out well. So yeah,
Oh,
that's kind of
so
how it all
good.
started.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact that you're even discussing the fact that it's black and white. Either God is sovereign or he is not. But
Yeah.
in addition to sovereignty, I think one of the big questions that I know that I speak with people often about, and that comes to mind in my own life, is yes, I believe God is sovereign, but is God also good? And what does that look like,
Mhm.
particularly during those seasons where it's hard? And so, how do you address that to help people understand that he's still good, even in the times where it's messy?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the ultimate question? I was on an interview a couple of months ago, and the host said, "Do you ever question the goodness of God, if He's good or
Mm.
not?" And I remember thinking about that and being like, honestly, I don't question His goodness. I question His methodology and His timing. If I had to
Ooh.
be really honest, those are the two places where the rub is for me. And so I think at some point I always go to, I go to Job and that passage. A lot of us know where God's like, where were you when I formed the galaxies? Where were you? And I have to step back and be like, yeah, where was I? Like, I
Mhm.
wasn't there. I am not He, obviously. And so I have to step back and say, okay, I have a long history of knowing God's goodness. If I look back and have a long memory of the many amazing places where God has shown up, and but for Him, things wouldn't have turned out well. If I can have a long memory of His goodness, then in the current situation, I can say, okay, He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if that's the case, if He did it before, He'll do it again. And that's why I think we just have those, like the stones of remembrance we talk about. We have those
Ooh,
like
yeah.
documented places in our life where we say, He's shown up, He's good, and we can trust Him. And even right now, when I can't see it, I'm going to trust His goodness.
I love that you pointed out the stone of remembrances. I'm doing the Bible in the year, right? So we
Yeah.
just went through the whole. Well, I'm still in the Old Testament. That takes what, even like 8 months, 9 months to get
Eight.
through.
Yes.
Yeah, it takes
Mm-hmm.
forever. But I do love how the Israelites, every single time God showed up, they created something, whether it was an altar or, especially in the beginning, the pile of stones. And so,
Yeah.
speaking of that in our own lives, how can we practically make that happen in the day to day to remember those times that God showed up?
Yeah, I've literally, and this is like the weirdest thing I'm going to say all day, probably, or someone's going to be like, "This is interesting, girl." But I literally built my own little Israelite style altar one time, and so when our family, after I'd stopped practicing law, and we had two bio kids, and we felt like the Lord called us into foster care, and I was like, "Foster care? I think that's just for like people that are like, I don't know, like playing the handbell choir, and they're just uber
Mm.
religious. Like, who does foster care? Surely not us, Lord." And the Lord kept pursuing and is like, no, it's going to be y'all. And so I remember going through this process, and there are so many just excruciatingly hard moments. And there was a hearing that was coming up for our little one, and we
Mm.
had him almost 2 years, and we felt like for sure he was going to go to a place that would not be in his best interest. And we had just
Mhm.
cried out to the Lord and begged him to do something that only he could do, miraculous for this child. And the hearing turned out in a way that was favorable for this little boy. And I remember I went down to this like creek bed in our neighborhood. And like I said, this gets a little weird, everyone, but stay with me. And I was like standing over this bridge and looking down and just kind of praying and thanking the Lord, but crying out and saying, like, this isn't over yet. This is hard. And I feel like the Lord was like, I think you need to stack some stones. And so I walked down there and I just started getting little rocks, and I built this little like stone altar. And I remember standing there and thinking, like, okay, like he's not a God of remove the hardship. He's a
Mm.
God of remember who I am. And that was a moment when the Lord's like, listen, you need to stack a stone. And I stacked a stone for when my husband nearly died from encephalitis, but he lived. And I stacked a stone for paychecks that came at just the right time. And I stacked a stone for a near death car accident that a friend was in. And I just stacked stones. And at the end of the day, it wasn't stones just every time things worked out the way I wanted to. Right? That's not how it works, but it was
Mm.
stones of knowing God was present in the midst of it.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
so I think that's the key is like practically speaking, I literally
Mm.
went and I feel like the Lord told me to stack some stones down at a creek and I did that. But since that time, I have stones literally like on my desk. They're sitting right here. I wish y'all could see them, but I have 5 or 6 sitting here right in front of me. Actually, I can grab one right here. I have stones and they have things marked on them, etched on the back, dates when the job came, dates when a child did something that we never thought that kiddo would be able to do, dates when a
Wow.
kid got into college, and not because they got in the right college, but because they got in the place that we knew we prayed over and God answered a prayer. And so I do that from stones on my desk. I do it from calendar reminders. I get one every year on certain dates. I mean, I just try to be very practical because I have a short term memory and my memory is about as long as the biggest problem in front of me right now.
Mm.
And I feel
Mhm.
like the Lord's like, okay, well, then let's be practical and let's keep remembering.
I love that you pointed out, and I wrote this down, like, know he's present, even though he doesn't answer it the way that you want him to answer.
Yeah.
I think that takes such maturity in our faith. I think oftentimes as new believers, we think that God's a genie and then he doesn't give
Hmm.
us the way what we want. Well, and it's so juvenile with our kids too. It's like they
Yeah.
can't differentiate between their wants and their needs. And that's part of parenting is helping them distinguish that. And so how did you continue to grow and mature in that faith in your relationship with the Lord to get to that place where you understood that His presence meant more than answering what you thought you wanted or needed at that time?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just it's a slow drip on that side of things. There's no
Mm.
question about it. But I would say this, I've seen the Lord not answer how I feel like he should have answered so many times and then been able to see it and say, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Right. And I think that for me is even in the midst where I'm like, go back to our foster care situation. Uh, there was nothing unkind, unholy, self preserving, anything in this whole situation that we were looking for. We wanted the best for this little guy. And I
Yeah.
just couldn't understand how it could go any other way. And still, at the end of the day, that I could see God's sovereignty. And ultimately, God did allow us to adopt this little kiddo. But I will say this, he could have done it on day 2 and that would
Mm.
have been amazing. He didn't. He did it on about day 790. And that was about the longest 790 days of our life because here we have this little boy that comes into our house in the middle of the night, a baby, 2 months old. And we don't know him, but I mean, he becomes part of our family and we're a year in and then, 18 months. And I just remember our whole family gathering around his crib night after night. A child at first we barely knew. And I mean, our 2 older kiddos, and my husband, we would just stand there and we would just literally cry tears and pray together and beg God to do something mighty and
Mm.
merciful because if he didn't, it didn't end well. And here's the thing, God could have answered the prayer on day 1, but we would have missed the journey. And we know God differently. Like I went into foster care scared of what it would do to our family, financially, emotionally, spiritually, on
Oh,
every
sure.
level. Right? I was scared, and the Lord could have answered the prayer and let us adopt him or whatever it is day 1. But I came out of foster care after 2 years. I went in scared. I came out scared of who we would be if we had not done it. Because
Hmm.
we're changed people when you do the things of God. You are changed people when you stand over a crib and pray for a kid like this. You are changed people when you take your other children to a part of town they've never been in and expose them to stories you never wanted your kids to know exist. Like, you're different on the journey with God. And yes, did he have the power and sovereignty to fix it on day one? Yes. But thank goodness he didn't, right?
Hmm.
And so that's my encouragement. It doesn't have to be foster care. I could give you 3,000 other examples, I feel like, of saying, like, God, if you're sovereign and good, then fix it. And he's like, I'm sovereign and good. And because of that, I'm not going to fix it yet. And maybe
Hmm.
not this side of heaven. And that's just how it shakes, right?
Absolutely. Wow. Just incredible statement of like change people by like being changed by God when you do God's works, like God's will. You walk in that obedience, that surrendered life. That's so, so cool. And I know that you have a difference in age from your foster
Ah,
kiddo, who now is your baby, right? Compared to
mhm.
your oldest children. What's that age gap?
Yeah, and people ask me sometimes that don't know me, they're like, "Hey, what's your stage of life?" And so I always say I'm somewhere between the second grade field trips and shopping at Chico's. Like, I mean, I've got all ages. I'm battling menopause and a second grader. So everyone, like, God has a sense of humor for sure. But I have
Yes.
a college kid. Actually, I have two seniors this year. So everyone, moment of silence for me. I have a senior at college at the University of Texas that's about to graduate in a couple weeks. I have a senior in high school that's about to graduate, and then I have a second grader. So whatever,
Wow.
yeah, whatever you're doing in life, I feel like whatever you're struggling with, like, I'm either there, I've been there, or I'm about to be there again. So yeah.
Yes, gosh, and I think that adds so much value and wisdom that you have been through those years, those second grade years, and I say this to my kids all the time. I was like, "The mother that you have now is so much better than the mother that you had when you were
Mhm,
little." And granted, it was a season of life, and it was chaos, and it was loud
mhm.
noises and smells. Well, the smells still happen because I have 2 teen boys, but
Oh,
it's
for
like
sure, for
it's
sure.
so crazy, right? That I feel like I want to go back and love them the way that I have
Mhm,
this maturity in parenting now. Obviously, that's not God's way, and that's okay.
mhm.
But what is some wisdom that you had gained through those seasons with your older kids now that you implement with your second grader?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. My second grader struggles academically. I
Mm,
mean, like on a whole different level. And I am so thankful for this. My senior in high school, when he was in kindergarten, I got a call from the teacher that said they were putting in the reading club. And I was like, the reading club? Like, that's the only club we don't want to be in at the school because that's for like
no.
the kids who struggle reading. And I was like, so I mean, the kindergarten teacher was lovely. And she just real quickly said, hey, we're just going to get him some extra help. And we hung up, and I was like, well, this is the end of the road. I knew it was coming, but here it is. Like, he can't read. He's probably going to never make it through high school, definitely not college. He's never going to have a job. So I guess I make him comfortable now. I don't know. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it was a whole situation. I was driving to pick him up, and I'm not particularly emotional, but I had tears in my eyes. I'm like, how am I going to tell him, like, this is kind of the end of the road for you, kid? And he got in the
Mhm.
car that day, and he said it was the best day ever because I got picked for the reading club. And he started
Oh.
explaining all the things that his teacher had told him. And all I could think was, thank goodness his teacher got to him before I got to him. I mean, my
Amen.
goodness.
Yeah.
But here's what I know now. That was kindergarten, and I'm about to graduate this kid from, as a senior in high school. I prayed and prayed and prayed, and I begged the Lord to take away the learning differences. It started at
Mm.
that age. That was the
Mhm.
first sign. And I begged the Lord to take that away. And I will tell you now, as a senior in high school, that this kid is the kindest, most compassionate kid. He is the hardest working. Every teacher, every
Mm.
coach tells us the hardest working kid they have. All these things. And he's also a bonehead because he's 18 and they're dumb and they do boneheaded things. So
Yeah.
hear me loud and clear. He's not perfect. But who he is now is because of the struggle. And
Mm.
everything I tried to pray out of his life is what God was using to make him into the man that he's become. And I am just so grateful that the Lord didn't answer those prayers, back to what we were talking about a minute ago. But second of all, I have the perspective to see that God's in it for the long haul, the long view of it. And I can see tiny glimpses of time. And I can see where he struggled academically and everything was harder. And he studied harder and got worse grades. I can see where it didn't look like he had very good friendships and all these things. But now I'm not completely on the other side of it, but I'm pretty close as he's headed to college. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, like this is what you were doing, Lord. And so I would just say, and with my second graders, we're going through learning struggles and all that.
Mm.
It's not over till it's over. And God is in it for the good work. So if it isn't good, it isn't finished. And so
Yeah,
I
so
am
good.
able to stand back. It's still hard. It's not like I'm Pollyanna about it. I'm like, well, I'm so glad he has learning differences and he still can't read. Like, no, I struggle with him through that, but there is hope in the midst of the hard.
That's so good. Yeah, I feel like, I have done that with my own kids where I have seen some of the things that I didn't want them to have to experience. But as I've learned, and then even in my own clinical practice, I remind parents that we don't want to handicap our kids, that those struggles actually build up their muscles. Helps them problem solve, it helps them build resilience. And it's so hard for us mamas, well, parents in general, to see our kids struggle. But as you're saying, like, they learn and they grow from that. And I didn't even consider, obviously, like God is using those things to
Mhm.
make them into who he wants them to be ultimately to serve his purpose, his will, and his ways in this world. And so, what a good reminder, especially for those moms that really want to come in and helicopter and micromanage when no, we just got to let them do their things. But let's speak on the flip side of that is like, what are some things that you've learned, just like structure and boundaries wise, that you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it different this time?
Yeah. I don't know. I've always kind of had this philosophy. There's two things that I would say, and I'm trying just to be even more about this with my youngest one. But one, I think laughter is valuable. Hence,
Mm,
writing a book all about making fun of myself. Life is messy. God is good. Pretty much what I didn't get right, and how can we laugh at that? But one, I think laughter is a valuable currency, and so I would just say, like my mom used to always say this: if you're gonna laugh about it in a year, then laugh about it now. So I
ooh,
would say
yeah.
that's one of the things is laughter. But then the other thing I think that's important is I try to give every easy yes I can give. And when they're little, that matters, but it really matters as they get older. As you know, with teenagers, like
Hmm.
I remember someone said the other day, oh, my daughter asked if she could get highlights. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, highlights? That's an easy yes. I'm trying to keep mine off the dark web over here. Okay. Like, my goodness, like whatever, if I can give an easy yes, I do, because I want my no to be no. And I want my kids, I want a relationship with my kids more than I want rules. And
Yeah.
I want them to want to spend time with us and come back later in life and us to have that. And so there are places where there are absolute hard no's for us with teenagers. Obviously it's drinking, anything, obviously drugs, those kind, anything
Mhm.
illegal. Let's start there. But really anything, if you're unkind, like you're going to, if you're disrespectful, those kind of things, like we are going to hammer down on character issues. But the rest of it, there's a little more room. And so we try to give yeses as much as we can. It's funny. My son this week, he just pulled up. I just saw his car out front, which made me laugh. And it's filthy muddy. He called Monday. Well, last Sunday night, he said, "Can I go fishing early, like 5 in the morning?" And I was like, "Gosh, I really, in my head, I don't want him to go fishing at 5 in the morning. But if he falls asleep, I go through all these things, right?" And then I'm like, "Okay, it's an easy yes. He's not asking to do fishing." So he goes. Last thing my husband says when he leaves, "Don't get your truck stuck." Calls me about 10 o'clock the next morning. Y'all already know what happened. It was stuck. And so, I said
Oh,
to him,
man.
I said, "Well, I mean, I guess we got to figure it out. You're going to college in a couple months and I'm not going to be there." And so he called around, and after 4 hours, he found someone, and he paid $250 of his own money to get it
Wow.
pulled out. Well, I mean, easy
Life
yes is,
lesson.
yeah, it's a life lesson. And I could have said, no, what if you, all the things that could have gone wrong. But you know what? He did it. He figured it out. He lost some money in the process. But I just think it's those kind of things. If you can laugh a little bit, we're going to laugh at the fact I'm looking at his truck and it is covered in mud from being pulled out.
Yeah.
Laugh when you can, say yes when you can.
Oh, such good wisdom. I love that. Well, one of the things that you point out in your book is just the community and the aspect of having friends. And you actually mentioned four crazy friends. What does that mean? And what are those characteristics? And how do we find those people in order to gain, hope and happiness and laughter in our lives?
Yeah, I think that we probably have those people around us. I'll answer that first. We just don't know it. If you're anything like me, I have some crazy, amazing close friends, but then I get on the, Instagram, and a group of girls went to Cabo without me. And I'm like, well, I knew it. I have no friends. And now it's been proved, right? But I would say, like, we need to really value quality over quantity and friends.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
you probably have those people in your life. You just need to dig into them. If not, they're at church, they're in a lot of places, right? But I love that story in the Bible, the guy who's on his mat, the paralytic, and he has those four guys that find out Jesus is in town and he wants to heal him, or they want him to be healed. So they take him to Jesus and they can't get in the door. So what do? They just leave his mat and they're like, "Sorry, bro, we tried." Well, no, of course not. They took him to the second floor and they cut a hole and they lowered him in front of Jesus because they knew that was the only way to healing. And
Mm,
Jesus said, "I'm healing you because of the faith of your friends." And if
mhm.
Jesus is healing people because of the faith of their friends, then you know your circle matters. And so I would say this. when you're looking at your friendships, we don't want friendships. We don't want the people that believe the problem's too big or they're too busy or they don't show up or whatever the things are. We want the friends that are fighting for our marriage when our marriage is hard and they believe in our dreams when we've given up on them,
That's
that will
right.
they'll carry our heavy booties to the second floor in order to get us in front of Jesus because they know Jesus is the only answer at the end of the day.
Mm.
And so I would say, like, search out those people, but be that person too. If you have one, two, three, four dear friends, four crazy friends that will do anything to point you back to Jesus, like you have what you need.
That's right. Wow. Gosh, that's such good wisdom. I mean, all these little mic drop moments, like so good. I so appreciate all the wisdom that you shared today. I would love for
Mhm.
people to get your book and to find you online. How can they do that?
Yes, life is messy. God is good. It's everywhere. I would love for you to grab it. I've been told, I've been told my kids have seen other teenagers and college kids reading it on spring break, which they think is hilarious. We're like, who knew?
Wow.
And then my mom's 80 and all her friends read it. So I hope it's a read that everyone can enjoy and laugh and appreciate. And it's at all these Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and all the usual spots. Life is messy. God is good. And then you can find me, CynthiaYanof.com kind of has it all. And yeah, my podcast is Mesmerized. Would love for you to tune in.
That's right. And listeners, know that is in our show notes as well. So you can find those links there. Well, Cynthia, I so appreciate our conversation today. I have laughed and I have learned, and really that is amazing. So I appreciate you, and I know the listeners do as well.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Friends, I hope that you enjoy the conversation with Cynthia. I know I did. I was literally taking bullet point notes on just the mic drop moments. I wanted to be like, hold on, just can you say that one more time? Like that was so good and so much wisdom. And so, if you're going to be like me, you're going to re listen to all the things she said because it was awesome. But maybe we can highlight that because now we're going to do some of the takeaways. And joining me to share some of their takeaways are my producers, Mike Segovia and Ariel Daves. Thanks for so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Always a joy. And boy, you ain't kidding. I was writing my list down as
Right.
well,
So
and
good.
so good. And one of the cool takeaways I got from your conversation with Cynthia is to value quality friendships and don't
Mm,
worry about the quantity of friends you've had. You know, I've had a few situations in my life where I needed just a few of those friends, not a bunch, and a few of those friends really stepped into my life and were there with me and prayed over me, and even the stuff I was just having trouble with and making mistakes, they just hung with me. I needed
mhm.
those guys. So, seek out those friends or that are in your corner,
Yeah.
friends that will have your back, be there for you when you need them, and even those friends that will correct you with that gentle little nudge of correction, those kind of friends. So yeah, I like being on Facebook and having a bunch of friends. That's kind of cool. But to have those few friends, that the
Mhm.
real quality friends, to me that's just amazing, and that really touched me, Paige. That was my biggest takeaway from your conversation with Cynthia.
And I love the fact that you're even delineating between like the friends on Facebook and like the close friends. I had someone that described it as the detailed friends. So the ones that
Mm,
know all the details, the ones that will challenge you and love you. And I love how even she said brings you to Jesus, right?
mm,
They lead
mm,
you to the place where you're going to be
mm.
healthy. And so helping our kids understand that there's different types of friendships and teaching them to find and define the type of friend that they need that's healthy and best. So I love that.
Yeah, no, that's a great takeaway, Mike.
Yeah.
I agree. The one that I had was the stones of remembrance when she was talking about the stones of
So good. Yeah.
stones of remembrance.
Mm,
I think that's one of the most powerful tools that we have against the enemy
Mhm.
is the tool of remembrance and who God is and where he's come in the past
Yeah.
and intervened in our
yeah.
lives. And I mean, when you think about life, it's all one big memory, right? And so if you don't place those stones, I tend to forget. If I don't write it down, if I don't make a point to remember what God's done in this moment, in this season, I tend to forget. And then when the enemy comes to attack, what do I have to
That's right.
stand on,
That's right.
and I go back to those moments. And Mike, you were talking earlier just about Psalm 77 and going
Mm,
back. Let's talk about all the ways God has been there in so
amen.
many instances. And I think that was such a powerful tool to remember because it builds our faith,
That's
right?
right.
And
That's
faith is
right.
Absolutely.
like a muscle, and you have to build that muscle, and you got to build your faith. And all the times that God's been there, write it down, make a
Yeah.
mark, because it's a powerful tool.
We use that clinically as well. We ask our clients to journal because it helps them see their progress.
Mm.
I did this with a marriage counseling recently because the spouses were unable to see the growth that their spouse was making. And so that
Hmm.
I told them, I was
Yeah.
like, you take your notes app on your Apple, I don't know about you Android folks and how that works for y'all, but you can share a note on there. And that way that you can put on there the bullet points of
Mhm.
growth and maturity and success, and you could celebrate those things. Because you're right, our world is full of trouble and it is going to make us overwhelmed and forget the times that God has shown up and been present. And that's so huge to build our relationship with him, because again, we're not always going to feel him in the presence in those moments of struggle and seasons of strife. But we do know, because he has promised and because he has shown up, that he will continue to do that as well. And so I love that. So journaling, she was using it actually physically. I can't even imagine like what that
Yeah.
altar and those
Oh my
stones look
gosh.
like. And her,
Yeah.
Incredible.
I can imagine like I come home and I'd be like, Ryan, God showed up in this way. Here's this boulder. We are going to celebrate with this boulder. I mean, I think he feels that way actually about coffee cups. I bring home a lot of coffee cups from like trips and stuff. I
There you
think
go.
he's like, this is what you're doing already,
There you go.
actually.
Your coffee cups
That's
of
what I'll say.
remembrance. I love it.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Gosh, I love that idea. That's what I'll tell him we're doing from here on out. For my takeaways, I love the practice of easy yeses. I think this is one thing that we need
Mm,
to start
Mm.
implementing across the board for all our kids, no matter their age. I do love the fact that we can also allow them to have that autonomy, that when they ask us for something and we ask them, well, tell me why you want to do this. And then we're like, yeah, of course, you can do this, that way. And that way they can grow from those experiences,
Mhm.
because it teaches them that we respect their decision making while still obviously having some boundaries and perimeters. But then we also allow them to have an experience that may or may not go successfully, and then they can learn from that as well. And so in our family, I do often the easy yeses. I just didn't have
mm.
that terminology. And so again, another thing that I can implement in my conversations with my kiddos. And then the last thing that I thought was really powerful is not praying away the things that I see in my kids, because that could be something God is using to build them up and build up into them, right? Like
Mhm.
how often do we as parents just want success for our kids, and it's because the definition of success is
Yeah.
worldly, and we're seeing it as something that maybe isn't the way that God sees it. And so reframing our prayers and reframing the way that we interact with our kids too. I'm watching Love on the Spectrum. Have you guys seen that at all?
No,
I've
I have
seen
Okay.
an
not.
episode or 2, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a love-hate relationship with this show. I don't
Mhm.
know why. It makes me feel both awkward and it makes me feel like so I love these people so very much. But
Mhm.
one of the conversations that I watched of a mom, she was talking about the gentleman named Tanner, who is the loveliest guy out there. I mean, he's so amazing. And she said, I tried to shut that down. I tried to shut down his personality. I tried to make sure he was acting a certain way because I knew it was counter to the rest of the way that kids were acting at that point. And I didn't want him to be bullied. I didn't want him to suffer. But what she realized is that as she was stuffing that, she was actually eliminating God's design in him. And that when she took a step back, she allowed him to be who he's created to be. And I'm telling you, his goal in life is to bring joy to the world. And that young man definitely brings joy to the world. And so what a great reminder that don't stuff the stuff in your kids. Is
Yeah.
that a cool phrase? Don't stuff the stuff in your kid.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll
Yep.
just go with it. I mean, it sounds good. It's easy to remember. We just need to recognize that God has created them uniquely. And so help
Mhm.
us pray those prayers, Lord, so that we can pray well for them and allow them to be who you've designed them to be. Friends, I've so enjoyed having this conversation with you. Thank you for listening to the show. Of course, if you have any feedback or guests that you would like to have on the show, let us know. We would love to hear from you. You can reach me personally at paigeklingenpeel@gmail.com. We have lots of exciting interviews coming up, so be sure to tune in again next time for another edition of Embracing Your Season.